Oh, I love my life. Anyway, yeah. I'm up here on top of the hill. I just went and got a whole truckload of this chipped yard waste here from the landfill, and I also got me a really tasty sandwich, and I'm gonna see if I can muster up some sort of method of you participating in this with me right here, right now, in the apocalypse. So, you're probably looking right at the steering wheel. You know what though? Sometimes things just don't go your way. That way you don't have to really watch me eat, but you can kind of see that I'm real. I'm doing the things that I want to do in the world, right? I mean, a truckload of mulch may not sound like much, or a smiley face with some stacked rocks may not seem like too much, but the mulch is going to give a space for a friend to be able to grow a garden, right? And I think gardens are cool. And the smiley face, every time that somebody is driving over this hillside and they look over there, they're going to see a smiley face. And maybe it'll remind them to smile, right? Because it's kind of an important part of life. When I go to town, I hardly ever see people smiling. And maybe it's just because maybe it's just because I'm going into Yakima. Maybe in places where people have more money or not so extreme of weather. Because I mean, like summertime is hot. It's really, really hot. And in the wintertime, it's cold. Sometimes it's really, really cold. But I chose to come. I chose to move here, right? I've lived all over. I've lived in Oregon. I grew up in Oregon, and I've lived in Northern California, and I've lived in Texas, and I've lived in Maine, and I've lived in New Mexico, and Colorado, and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and Balkashir, Turkey, and now Yakima, Washington. Right? Why would I choose Yakima? People ask me that all the time. They're like, "You came here on purpose?" They think people just get stuck here. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of corruption in local governments. There's a lot of really, really, really cool people though that are still trying to make things better, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make things better. And so I'm taking land that looks like what you're seeing right here. It's just a product of erosion. And I'm doing like what a lot of other places are doing, and I'm improving my landscape. And so, like you can see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, right over here, that is right up above where my homestead is, where my property is. And so, I'm going to watershed. I mean, it's like, I don't know, 1,000 acres or better that's dumping and running right past my place. And when I first moved here, I was too busy trying to pay for the place, and so I was in town a lot, and I was just basically using the space out here to sleep and kind of hang out for a little while, and when I wasn't running around trying to spend all my money and make more of it, so I could just keep doing that, right? And I did that for a while, and I got good at it, and I started my own business, and I did well in the business, but it wasn't well for me, really, because it was killing me. The stress of always living up to the expectations of other people and being perfect, because when you hire a plumber, you expect perfection. You don't want leaks. You don't want the faucet, the thing that you're using every day, to be all janky and like who did this? Did you get a mechanic? What kind of mechanic did you get doing this? but yeah, so servicing this valley with plumbing, it was lucrative, right? But it was also stressful. And it came to a point when I was 36 on Father's Day that I ended up in the hospital, and I had an ulcer in my throat um, that had ruptured. For years, I had been getting sick every morning. Just the stress. I'd look at my to-do list, and it just seemed so overwhelming, right? And with this to-do list to get done every day, it was really stressful, because if one little thing goes wrong and you have to run for parts on any of the jobs that you're doing, I mean, I was stacking myself up on jobs. I mean, we were really knocking out some work, and when something doesn't go right, that could, I mean, it's not that big of a deal because I was working time and material typically for people. So, I mean, whatever it takes to do the job by a professional, that's what you're paying. But it affects me because now I've got to try to I got to try to move at least one or two people that was in the next time blocks towards the end of the day, so that way I can still keep the rest of the schedule good. And anyway, if you're not in business, you don't really care about that. And it's I think the reason a lot of people choose to just be employees. But as an employee, you're making, or I was making, $27 an hour. But as a um, entrepreneur or a business owner or self-employed, I was making typically over 100. And so, I mean, that's a great motivation. I mean, if somebody's willing to drop $100 every hour that you're working, um, you're willing to give them a lot of hours. And so it wasn't a rarity that I'd be working 12 plus hours a day. And anyway, getting to the important part about this is the stress almost killed me, right? And when I ended up in the hospital, I'd gotten sick 3 times, like a horror movie shower of my life force, right? And my heart rate was 27 beats a minute when I got into the hospital, and I think my body was just getting ready to shut down. And they got me into the emergency room, and they started running IVs into all 4 of my limbs, and they seemed like it was a pretty important deal that they get to work on it. I had an out-of-body experience, and I was looking down on my body, and so I was like, I'm dead. But I felt loved. I felt accepted. There's no worries, no judgment. And that was so in opposition to what I had been experiencing that it changed my life. I was no longer focused on making money. I wanted to create change. And I started being directed in all sorts of ways, and I knew I had been giving up my time and energy for money and for wants, because plumbing is a want. I mean, people, like right out here by that smiley face, I just peed on the ground, right? And I peed on the ground, and it didn't even take 2 gallons of water to rush it away somewhere else. And it's actually going to benefit that little piece of grass, dried up chunk of grass. I think it said thank you. It was like kind of parched. But it didn't take code enforcers, and it didn't take permits, and it didn't take $100 an hour for somebody to put together pieces of pipe to carry something from here to there, right? We're sending everything away. And where is a way, right? Where is a way? Where a way is just somebody else's problem someday, right? But I realized that I had not felt that level of calmness and peace being outside of this body, looking down on it like it was a worn out pair of boots that I was getting ready to float away from, right? Nothing that I had been building mattered. It didn't matter that I had, 6 digits in the bank. It didn't matter that I had bought property. It didn't matter that I was driving a nice vehicle. It didn't matter that I had a nice boat. It didn't matter that I had these little toys that I thought were going to make me happy, and truly didn't, because I didn't even have time to use them, right? Too busy making money to be able to enjoy it. I was giving all my energy to a bank account. I was only out of my body for a few seconds, or what it felt like a few seconds, because I learned so much in that time, and I really feel like I could have stayed, like just let the body go, but the only thing holding me here was my daughter. She was 12 years old. And I didn't want to leave her. And as soon as I thought that, I opened my eyes and I was back in my body. And then they were rushing me into, right after I like dropped back into my body. I didn't even drop. I just like, in one instant I was at a different perspective, like 8 feet away, and then in the next perspective I was inside my body again. And I opened my eyes and I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck just happened, right? And then you get a whole crew coming in, and they wheeled me into surgery, and yeah, and they knocked me out again. I don't remember that aspect. I don't remember anything of that. And I woke up and I was in the hospital for 3 days. When I got out, I quit drinking. I got out of the relationship that I was in. She was a good person, I'm a good person, but we weren't good together, and we were fighting and arguing and drinking, and it wasn't really good for either one of us, and I think we were both holding on to each other just because we didn't like being alone. But I've learned that I've found my simplicity in solitude. And out here in the desert, it's not as comfortable as other places. It seems that comfort and convenience is found where there's a lot more people and things going on, and out here there's a lot going on. I mean, I was up there a couple summers ago. I was picking up some trash around on the hillside and stuff, and I saw a piece of trash over by this bush, and I started walking over towards that bush. I'm on a mission here, and I heard a ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. I'm like, whoa. And I looked down, and about 8 feet away from me, there was underneath one of the sagebrush, there was a giant rattlesnake, like the biggest one I've ever seen. I mean, his girth had to have been probably like this. I'm guessing he was at least 8 to 10 feet long, maybe bigger. I don't know. He was huge, but he was all coiled up, right? I mean, he was just a mass of snake with a big old head. And I was like, oh, wow. I was like, you know what? I don't need to go right there. I'll just go around, But he was nice enough to let me know. He's like, hey, dude, you're in my space. He's willing to probably bite me. I mean, he didn't come after me, but he just let me know, hey, what's up? watch where you're stepping, buddy. And watching where I'm stepping is watching what I'm doing in each now moment, right? I learned in meditation and yoga that if we manage our breath consciously as often as possible, we're going to be making choices in our life that aren't compulsively aligned, but rather consciously aligned with what we want to create our life. I mean, like I gotta admit it, I love my life. I was asked earlier today, actually, that a guy that was helping me out today, he was asked a question, and so he wanted to find out what I had to say about it. And he said, he says, if you could be doing anything you want, and if you weren't here, what would you want to be doing? Like, what is your dream life if you aren't here? If this isn't, I said, well, I'm already living my dream life. So I'm creating the changes in an education center and a platform, and I'm sharing it online with these, the digital audience. I know you're real. I hope so. Maybe it's just all an AI program, right? Little Players, the Truman Show. Are we all playing this Truman Show? But no, if he asked me where I would want to be, I was like, well, I'd want to be everywhere. I like having, I'm like a nomad, but they call it a rubber tramp nomad, or a rubber nomad, because you got tires, right? You're not just walking. But yeah, I choose to be homeless. I choose to be home free. People say, how would you make your money? Why wouldn't you just end up on the streets? And I'm like, no. No. I said knowledge is power, and I know that there's a ton of nonprofits all over this nation, all over the world, who need helpers, right? They need helpers. They need people who are willing to do things. And I'm able-bodied, and I've learned a lot of different things. I mean, I've learned a trade that you can charge for over $100 an hour for. I know how to work on cars. I know how to do a lot of stuff. I operate heavy equipment, and I built my own home, right? I built my own home, but because the state keeps on stealing money from me every year, and I'm trying to spend my money on things that I want to support, I've rented out my house. So somebody that was homeless now isn't homeless. But somebody who did have a home, the state is charging me too much money, in my opinion, so I just made myself homeless. So somebody else can pay those bills, and somebody else can live within four walls, and somebody else can have a television and a refrigerator and a stove and a shower and a place to pee that when you flush it, it goes away. And I think that a person needs to experience these polarities to fully appreciate any option. Because some of the homeless out there, they don't know that it's an option, that they could just go somewhere and start volunteering. And if you're personable, and if you're pleasant, and you're hardworking, they're probably going to actually, maybe make you an offer of a paid position, something that would help you out, and something that would buy your fuel, and something that might help you with a repair on your vehicle, or, there's ways around getting a corporate job to survive, right? I trust in people. Every time I've been on the road, and if I needed to make some money, or if I needed some tools, or I needed to be able to do something that I didn't have the ability to do because I didn't have the stuff, you go to a cafe at as soon as they open, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you talk to the farmers, because they're there. They're there with their buddies, and they're getting their bacon and eggs, and they're chatting and doing their thing. And that's mostly the retired farmers, the older guys, right? The younger guys, they're out there making their money. But the older guys, they've realized that, what, the cows are still going to be there at 7 o'clock. And if I want to go hang out with my friends at 5 o'clock, I should do that. because we don't know how many of these todays we're going to get. People say someday I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that, someday. But I've never seen that on a calendar. Right? The dates on a tombstone are pretty solid, right? It didn't say that they're going to die someday. Every day we wake up, we should be thankful for the opportunities that we're being given. The right now moment is escaping a lot of people in a lot of ways. It's like we're playing our lives on repeat. It's a loop. You wake up to a bell and you get in a box, and then you go to another box and into another box, and you drive your vehicle box to the work box, and then you get down to the work box and you go to the hospital box, or you go to the restaurant box, or you go to the food grocery store box. Get your gas from the box. Everything comes through a meter, or everything. It ends up being a lot of money just to exist. So when I had my experience when I was 36, I realized, I'm like, well, I either need to figure out a different way to make money, or lower my schedule down, and I lowered myself down to like 4 days a week, and like reasonable 8 hours, right? I stopped overscheduling myself, and that helps. But then the state again required the same amount of bond and insurance and licenses and all of this, whether you're working 1 day a week or 7. So then I realized, I'm like, well, the other way is just to spend a lot less. And so I started spending a lot less, and I sold my boat and I bought a canoe. And the boat had registration on the boat and registration on the trailer, and maintenance and fuel and oil changes and de-winterization and winterization and storage and all this stuff, right? And the canoe has an oar, right? No boat launch fees, no registration necessary, no fuel. And now when I'm paddling around, the birds don't freak out and take off. They just watch me. They're like, oh, hey, dude, what's up? Right? They're like, oh, you're quiet. That's nice. Different experience than when I was blasting past them with a V8 powered jet boat. Right? I enjoy my life a lot more now that I've made it more simple. I wake up when I want. I go to bed when I want. Well, I don't even go to bed because I don't have a bed. Well, I kind of do. In my van, I have a flat platform that I like to sleep on. But I've also learned that fasting is fantastic if you're looking to save money, lose weight, and make yourself a lot healthier, right? At least try to skip a day, right? Or at least start by skipping a couple meals. You don't really have to eat breakfast. If you just drink a big glass of water, good clean water without fluoride and chlorine in it, it really does a lot for you. Or do a little bit of Tai Chi, just like some movement, some exercises, jump around a little bit, get your body working, stretch. I used to have to go to the chiropractor. I was dehydrated. I was filling up on Mountain Dew, and then in the evening I was topping it off with Coors Light. I was eating fried foods and stuff from convenience stores because that's what was convenient. I was working in commerce, and so fast food was common. I mean, it wasn't good, but it filled the void, right? And luckily back then, Taco Bell had fourth meal too, because 3 meals a day surely isn't enough. But with fasting, at least intermittent fasting, you're allowing your body to, um, you gotta face the things that you're trying to escape from. So when our mind starts going in any way, people sometimes want to distract themselves with with food or alcohol or drugs or sex or just entertainment in general, right? Something is going to distract you from what you're thinking. But that's what is important for us to face, is what we're thinking, because what we're thinking is what we're creating in our life. I used to wake up, what do I have to do today? I felt like a slave. Even though I was the boss, I still felt like a slave. I felt like there was all of these demands and all this stress being placed upon me that I had to jump through hoops to meet. But I was choosing to do that. I had made a choice to start a business. I made a choice to buy the equipment. I made a choice to buy all of the things that I had bought. I have a choice. I made a choice. And those choices led to actions, and those actions were manifested reality. But when I started thinking about what's actually important to me, I started making different choices. And when I started making different choices, I started receiving a whole different life experience. It was like I turned a page and now it's a different book. My history can read like two different people depending on the years that you've focused on, which chapter. I'm on chapter 52 right now. I like it. I do hope to be traveling again soon, because I really like that part too. I mean, you can only spend so many years out in the desert before you really do want to go hang out by the ocean and go hang out in the forest and hang out in the creeks and the swamps and all over the place, right? But the desert's taught me a lot. It's taught me what is natural. Not normal. Normal has been advertised to us, whereas natural is natural can't be advertised. Nature can't be advertised. A different way of being, but it can be shifted through human intention. Other countries, India, China, among others, they're using permaculture techniques to shape landscape. And I want to touch on that. So after my incident when I was 36, I got into meditating and stuff, and I started asking the questions I didn't have answers for, and then meditating on it. And answers came to me in ways that I was like, wow, that's handy. that's handy. I was being directed into, I asked myself, what are the problems in the world that I would like, what are the root issues to the problems in the world, and how can I help to create an awareness of how we create change? Because, one person's probably not going to do a whole lot, right? I mean, especially when you only have like 700 subscribers on Facebook and a couple thousand people following on Yeah, I got about 700 subscribers on YouTube, and about, I think, 4,000 and some following on Facebook. But even that, though, I mean, there's 8 billion people on this planet. So even if everybody who's participating in my digital essence hears this, it's still just a few people. But what can a few people do? A few people can share ideas. And when those ideas are shared by a lot of people, they become a new way, or another way, a way that hasn't been advertised to us, an option that exists right now, that if we put our energy to it, it would solve problems. So one of the big problems I recognize is that we're having fire and flood and erosion and drought and famine. We have homelessness, malnutrition. We have people that are living in stress. You know that stress is the opposite of ease, right? If something's easy, it's not stressful. So if you're in stress, you're in dis-ease. And dis-ease of the mind makes it to where we don't want to be focused on what we're thinking, right? And so then we distract ourselves from that in certain ways. And when we distract ourselves from that in certain ways, if they're not healthy, then we get disease of the body because we're doing things to our body that aren't healthy. So if we can eliminate the root, we eliminate the fruit, right? You can't just trim off a few branches and expect that the problem's not going to still be there. But if you transform the root, then it changes the fruit, right? So like if what I'm doing on my property was implemented all the way across these hillsides, we would be reducing fire, flood, erosion, drought, famine, and homelessness, because we can capture the water that falls out of the sky. And people are saying, Rob, you're out in the desert. There's not much water out in the desert, right? But there is in the wintertime. And every acre receives about 227,000 gallons of water. We get about 8 inches of annual precipitation. Well, if you're managing that water instead of allowing it to contribute to the flooding down below, and that's happening on a big scale, we've effectively reduced flooding. And if you can now stay out in the desert longer, dig a hole in the ground and build you a cool house, and you can find comfort without the huge cost, then people can start working maybe a month or 2 months out of the year and be on vacation for 10 months a year, right? Because that's possible for most everybody. But we're giving our money to a landlord's bank account, right? We're putting our hard-earned money into somebody's bank account that it may never even get spent, or it'll be spent by somebody, his great-grandchildren, on a Coke binge. Hookers and Coke, that's what your money's going towards. Maybe, I don't know. So we solve these problems through permaculture. That's what basically explains what nature does naturally and how we can implement it in our landscape to work with infrastructure and existing things that probably need to be protected, right? Because the beaver will build a dam wherever he sees water running. He doesn't care about your infrastructure. And that's why there's a conflict with beavers and people, right? Back in the 1800s, people hunted beaver to near extinction. And now we're concerned about the flooding and the erosion. And then because the water isn't being held to the landscape, we're experiencing drought and fire. But when you can create green belts through the desert, you're not going to eliminate fire, right? You're never going to eliminate fire. It's an element of the earth. It's there to cleanse. It's there to turn what was into what was, But we can reduce what we're experiencing. And when we start building our houses out of rock and out of cob, we can, these grasses, they burn if they catch on fire, right? But if they're put in mud, then they become a binding agent for the mud, right? And it creates really, really strong walls. And people used to do things like this, and they still do in some places, but it's not popular. And that's the thing, is it's just not popular yet. People see it, they like it, they like the ideas, but it takes a lot of courage to do outside of the normal. People have an idea of what's normal, what's acceptable, and what they're capable of doing. But I think people need to realize that we're really capable of doing a lot more than what we've ever realized. We've been limited by the education system, by the opportunities presented to us in cities. So that's how we fix the landscape. How do we fix stress? How do we fix the people, right? How do we get people out of depression and out of anxiety and out of their head, right? In a way that it's functional without drugs, without having to have a pill every day from Pharma, right? That's meditation. We meditate by creating an awareness of right now. So if I realize that I'm starting to be irritated by something, or thinking negatively about something, or if anything's happening in my mind that I don't want to be empowering, I breathe. I breathe in through my nose, and I fill up my lower diaphragm first, and I allow it to fill into my chest, and then I exhale out of my mouth. So I'm breathing in deeply and exhaling completely. And when I do that, I ask myself, what can I control about me right now? Right? That's only me, right? I can only control me right now. And so if I can control me right now, how do I want it to be? Well, I want it to have a strong foundation, so it's not easily rocked into compulsive action. I used to be really an angry person. I was anxious often, and I don't want to be that way, right? And so I have to make sure that the compulsiveness isn't what guides what my actions are. I want my actions to be conscious. Now, if I have to be aggressive or I have to be that way, I know I can, but I'm asking myself now, is that what's best? Or is this going to hold a regret? I mean, do you know everything about the situation? Or, whatever it is, right? And if I ask myself, how do I want to be? Well, for me, to have a solid foundation, I want to be experiencing health, happiness, peace, and abundance. So if I'm making a choice about my food, or if I'm going to eat, that's for my health. Or am I going to drive the 200 yards or 2 miles or whatever, or am I going to walk? Am I going to do push-ups, or am I going to do some planking, or am I going to do what am I going to do right now, right? Because right now I could be doing a lot of different things, right? I could just be sitting here talking to you, right? I don't do that very often, so I'm taking this as an opportunity. I got a sandwich here waiting for me that I'm gonna chew on here in a minute. But so my health, those are my choices. People are trying to blame their grandpa, but it's not your grandpa's fault that you're gobbling up candy like it's grapes, you know. Like if I gobbled up candy, my grandpa would ask me. He says, do you have taste buds in your stomach? I thought about it. I'm like, no, I guess not. He says, well, why aren't you tasting that instead of just shoving it in your gut? So I was like, oh, right, yeah, makes sense. I should probably be tasting it if I'm wanting to consume it for its taste. You know, because it's not a health benefit, but it maybe it tastes the right way. It tastes the way I want it to taste. So I should enjoy it as long as possible. He also told me, he says if you're trying to digest your food, which is kind of the goal of something, you should chew every bite 30 times. He says you won't be so hungry all the time, you know, because you're just gobbling up stuff. And that's why you're fat. You know, I mean, he was really no bullshit. I was a chubby kid. He's like, that's, you know, he says you gotta start eating a little differently than what you're doing. Gotta be a little more active than what you're being. So my health is my action and my consumption. My happiness, how do I want to be, right? I'd rather be happy than sad. And what would make me sad, right? What would make me sad? Be somebody dying, right? Maybe your favorite person dies. Maybe a lot of your favorite people have died, right? But when you know what that feeling is, that reconnection to the everything, you got to be happy for them. I mean, the only one that's suffering is those that are feeling that they're left behind, right? The skin suit comes and goes, you know. It's useful in this 3D realm that we're in. You know, the spirit probably doesn't really care too much about spreading out the mulch, but the happiness or food that can grow from it, the people that are going to be experiencing it probably will. We have the ability of shifting our life when we take control of it. If we're waiting for somebody somewhere else to control our life, then it's probably going to be a long wait, right? Maybe you'll die first. Peace. I want to be peaceful. I've been in environments where you don't know if you're the next to die. I'd rather be peaceful. Abundance. To me, an abundance is the breath. If I have the breath, I have the ability to be doing things that I want to do in this body, using this as a tool. Basically, I'm a tool. This body is a tool. I know that I'm not this. It's mine. But when I was outside of this, it made me realize that I'm not that. I'm not limited to that. I'm in better shape now at 52 than I was at 36. A lot better shape. My mental clarity, my physical abilities, night and day. Anyway, I just want to say, hey, I hope you love your life. I love my life. I'm out here doing what I want to do. And there's solutions to all of these problems in the world. They're just not receiving the attention they deserve yet.